Well, welcome back to Marky Mark's Woodshop. And today we got a new toy in the mail. Let's go check it out. Well, we have acquired a Stanley 5 1/4 plane to add to our collection. These were used in schools mainly during the 50s and 60s. I don't know how to date them. They're a little bit narrower than the normal plane. So what we're going to do is see how the blade is and give it a little fine honing. So to do that, we're going to remove the cap and the blade assembly. There's a chip breaker on the back of the blade to stiffen it up and provide support right at the cutting surface. So let's remove the blade. The blade looks like it's needy, and in fact I prefer them to be a little bit concave. This one is just the opposite. So to quickly rectify that, let's take it over to the grinding wheel first before we proceed with the scary sharp method. So what we're looking at here is a wet grinder from Grizzly. Got this on sale for like, I don't know, 60 bucks. And it comes with a 2500 grit whetstone and a leather stropping wheel. So this will whip the blade edge into shape rather quickly, and then we'll fine tune the edge. So I've got the blade already set up in the jig, and it looks like it needs a little bit more water. It was pretty dry. Once you get your blades the way you want them, maintenance is much easier and you don't need to do this. I'm just holding it on there with even pressure and it's doing its thing for me. Let's check to make sure we're on there. Just a little bit off. Let's see if I can adjust that. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight. Your tool has adjustment for that. But of course, the closer you get it, the less adjustment you have to use. And you can see it's starting to do something there with the shiny part. More water, it's sucking it up like you wouldn't believe. So there we have it, off of the stone, and you can see the edge it's put on there by the shiny area at the tip of the blade. And it's pretty sharp, however, not for our purposes in woodworking. That just gave us a starting point. So what we're going to do is take it to the next level. And what I'm about to show you is something called the scary sharp method. First of all, let's set our angle. And we're going to do that with a gauge. I've seen some people better than I do it by eye. There's a couple of masters I've found on YouTube that are just awesome. They do it so much that they've just got the right feel for it. I've done that in the past, but I don't trust myself. And it's easier just to set it this way using the gauge. So what I've just done is set the angle to 30 degrees and locked in this little guide that's going to help us sharpen it. And what we're going to do is use graduating sandpaper. And I'm going to start off with 240. and we'll eventually work our way up to 1500. I've seen the pros work themselves up to 10,000 grit, and I've actually got some that goes up to 60,000. It's ridiculous. It feels like glass, but 1500's good. If I could get to 2,000, I'd do that. So working at, this is 240 again, 240 grit. And this will knock off the roughness left by the stone. So that looks like that's enough of that. So next is 400. Now this will start to put the edge on it. And you want to do this on a flat surface. I used to use a piece of plywood and a pane of glass. That'll work just fine. But of course my cast iron table's very flat. It's got to be clean of any debris, dust, glue, etc., etc. Okay, let's move it up to 600. You would sharpen a chisel in the exact same manner. Next, I thought I had 1,000, but that seems to be absent, so we're going right to 1,500. I should probably spend a little bit more time with each of the grits, but it'd probably get boring watching me do this for half an hour, so I'm just going to run through it pretty quickly, because after that I've got to show you the adjustment, how to adjust it. A good enough kind of edge to do that. And it's not perfect. I could work it a little bit more, but again, in the interest of speed. So I've worked on the edge of the angle. Now the next thing I want to do is the back side. It needs to be flat, and a lot of times you can run your finger against it, never into it, against it, and you can feel some roughness. So we're just going to do the back of the blade flat and knock off any roughness there. And that's good enough. Eventually you can do it to where all the dirt's gone. If you can see a little bit of dirt up by the tip, that's how you know you got it. And in fact, another option would be on one or two of my tools. I forget if it was a chisel or plane. The manufacturer recommended just a slight bevel on the back, which is done by using, in my case, I've got a very thin rule, stainless. I bought a cheap one, like for $1, so I could do this. And it raises the back just a little bit, where I can go back and forth and give me just a slight bevel on the back, just like a ½ degree. I normally don't do that with the older Stanley planes, but that makes a difference on the edge. So let's put it back together. And don't push your blade over the cap. Turn it and put it together like that. That way you don't run the metal over the fine edge you just put on there. And we want to leave maybe a 1/16 of an inch of blade showing. And another thing you want to check too, while I got it apart, your chip breaker needs to be flat as well as clean. This one's got just a little bit of oxidation on it. I'm going to go ahead and take it off because that'll prevent the material you're removing to clog up there. This is pretty clean and straight, just had a little bit of oxidation on it. Cleaned that off. And back together we go. 1/16 of an inch-ish. And back in the plane. And of course at this point you want to be careful not to damage your blade if it protrudes. So that's in. And let's put our cap back on. That could be just a little bit tighter. Want it to snap firmly but not too firm. So it doesn't move. That should be good. So let's take it over to the workbench and get a piece of scrap and adjust it. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to adjust this by eye at first. So it needs to protrude just a little bit, which it's not doing. So I'm going to use the adjustment knob here, which moves the frog, which will make the blade protrude. And I can feel it protruding a little bit more here than there. So we're going to use this lever to adjust that. Okay, I think I may have a starting point. So what we're going to do is this is just a piece of scrap, and I'm going to give a test using each side of the blade. Well, it needs to protrude a little bit more, and it's cutting on the right but not the left, so I need a little bit more, or a little less adjustment actually. Okay, it's cutting pretty even, and we're getting some nice shavings. So now I'm going to try it in the middle, which is where your planing is going to go. So there we go. That was pretty quick and easy. Now my shavings are just a little bit thick, so I'm going to back off just a little bit, because a lot of times you don't want to plane too much of a particular item. You're only after a little bit. There we go. You can almost see through it. That's good. So there we have it. Pretty quick and painless. There's some other things to do to tune up a plane, which include doing the same thing with the sandpaper over the sole, which will flatten it. This one looks pretty good. You can also do it to the sides. And you can go a little bit more with cleaning up the blade and removing the frog and putting a little grease in there and flattening that. But this is all about the blade. So there we have it. Pretty quick and easy. Now we have a new tool in our arsenal. And of course, you can never have too many tools in your arsenal. So leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, like, and thanks for watching. We'll see you again.